Dobrý den, krásné čtvrteční odpoledne. Today we are going to take a look at the connector dokud. I'll show you 10 different phrases where we can use dokud. I chose this specific connector because it's pretty common in the Czech language, and also the grammar is sometimes a little bit different than in English. You will see what I'm talking about very soon. The connector dokud can be translated as long as or while, or also as until. It is important why I separated these options. Both these refer to something that continues while something is going on, as long as something is going on, whereas until means something is not gonna happen until a certain situation comes. Let's see what I mean. Já jsem si tady připravila mátový čaj, litr mátového čaje, a dokud ho nevypiju, tak tahle lekce neskončí. Na zdraví. Ahoj, vítejte na mém kanále Czech by Zuzka, kde vám pomocí angličtiny vysvětluju českou gramatiku. Let's take a look at the first batch of sentences where we could translate dokud as long as or while. So we have this duration. Imagine your grandfather or grandmother tells you, cestuj dokud jsi mladý. Cestuj dokud jsi mladý. Travel while you're young. Travel while you're young. Cestuj dokud jsi mladý. Very easy. Or you're outside with your family and they're asking you, how long are we gonna be here? And you can say, zůstaneme venku, dokud bude vidět. We'll stay outside as long as it's daylight. So as long as, for a while. Dokud bude vidět might be an interesting phrase for you, but this is something common in Czech. Dokud bude vidět means as long as you can see, meaning as long as you can see in the daylight. If you're interested in this particular construction, I covered it in a video some time ago. You'll find the link below the video. Dokud tady bude šéf, tak ti nemůžu zavolat. As long as the boss is here, I cannot call you. Sorry. Dokud tady bude šéf, tak ti nemůžu zavolat. Tak is not necessary here, but it's very typical in Czech. We often use it when we talk about conditions, and in fact, this in a way is a condition. I'm telling you, if the boss is here, I cannot call you, in a way. Imagine a dramatic situation. A mother or a father tells their daughter, dokud budu žít, tak si Jardu nevezmeš. As long as I live, you won't marry Jarda. Jarda is a man's name, Jaroslav, and we shorten it to Jarda. Dokud budu žít, tak si Jardu nevezmeš. And again, tak is typical, especially in spoken Czech. All these situations talk about something that is happening. As long as something is happening, or while it is happening, it is going to be that situation. While you're young now. As long as it's daylight, it's still daylight. As long as the boss is here, well, he's still here. And as long as I live, well, I'm still alive. Take a look at the verbs that come after dokud. This is important. Cestuj dokud jsi mladý. This is present tense. Travel while you're young. It's present tense in Czech, present tense in English. Zůstaneme venku, dokud bude vidět. As long as it's daylight. In English, you would use present tense. In Czech, we would like future because we are talking about something that is going on and will be going on for some time. We could also say dokud je vidět, although in this sentence we would not say dokud budeš mladý. Here we prefer to keep it only in the present tense because this is an imperative and the imperative is related to the present, so we would like to keep it both in a similar tense. But here, zůstaneme, this is a perfective verb. It refers to the future. We will stay outside as long as it will be daylight, except in English you cannot say will be. The same is here. Dokud tady bude šéf. As long as the boss is here and will continue to be here, I cannot call you, and it means I will not be able to call you either. Dokud budu žít, as long as I'm alive, tak si Jardu nevezmeš. This is a similar situation. Except here we're using budu, future tense, because also this part is in the future. You won't marry Jarda. I don't want you to think that dokud is followed by a verb only in the present and future. We can also use past tense when we talk about something that happened. Just like with this sentence that we already had, cestuj dokud jsi mladý, travel while you're young. You could also say, I traveled while I was young. Cestoval jsem, dokud jsem byl mladý, nebo, if you're a woman, cestovala jsem, dokud jsem byla mladá. In that case, there is past tense in both parts. Dobrý. Okay, jdeme dál. Here it's a different story. You can also use dokud in a form of condition. You can talk about a situation that can happen when something changes, when there is a change in circumstances, which we mention in the context. Nepůjdeš ven, dokud nedoděláš domácí úkol. You won't go out until you finish your homework. Let's read this again. Nepůjdeš ven, dokud nedoděláš domácí úkol. And listen again in English. You won't go out until you finish your homework. Have you noticed something strange? When you compare the Czech and the English verb here right after dokud, there is something different besides the tense. Okay, this is future and in English it's present because until doesn't allow future tense in English. Listen again. Dokud nedoděláš, until you finish. In Czech, we use the negative form, the negative verb after dokud when we translate it as until. In other words, if you are not finished, you cannot go out. That's why I said this is kind of like a condition, expressed with different grammar. As long as this homework is not finished, you won't go out. So remember, we use negative verb in Czech after dokud. Dokud is typical for recipes. When you read a Czech recipe and they give you instructions, dokud is really, really common. Or not only for recipes, but anything that you're supposed to make, manuals, and you have to wait for something to be dry, to be cold, to be baked. So this is a perfect example. Pečeme v troubě, dokud bochánky nezezlátnou. We bake it in the oven until the buns turn golden. Nezezlátnout. We have this beautiful verb zezlátnout. Zezlátnout is to turn golden. Zlato is gold. Nezezlátnout. Pečeme v troubě, dokud bochánky, some kind of bread rolls, buns. Remember in Czech we're negative, more negative. Nezezlátnou. We can also express a similar idea with the connector až. Pečeme v troubě, až bochánky zezlátnou. Another sentence from a recipe. Muffiny, the muffins. Muffiny pečeme asi 30 minut, dokud nevyběhnou. We bake the muffins about 30 minutes until they rise. We use baking soda, so they need to rise. Muffiny pečeme asi 30 minut, dokud nevyběhnou. Negative here. The verb is vyběhnout, a very interesting verb. It is related to running, to start running. But you can also use it when you use yeast or baking soda and then the heat helps it rise, to grow. Vyběhnout. Dokud nevyběhnou. Notice that we use it to express a certain condition. Don't do it until this is the situation. And remember, dokud would go with negative form. And in this case, we would use the future tense rather than the present. We could also use past if we used these sentences in past, and this verb would also be in past. I also would like to mention that you can also switch the order many times, like you saw in the first part. You could also say, dokud nedoděláš domácí úkol, tak nepůjdeš ven. But we like to add tak in the second part. It's not necessary, but it's very Czech. For these recipe instructions, I would prefer this word order. Keep dokud in the second part. Remember the sentence I said at the beginning? A dokud ho nevypiju, tak tahle lekce neskončí. So, now we understand why I said dokud to nevypiju. 3 more sentences where dokud will be translated as until, and then we will have a verb in the negative form. Budu studovat denně, dokud to nebudu umět nazpaměť. You have some really good phrases here. I'll be studying daily until I know it by heart. Umět nazpaměť, umět něco nazpaměť. To know something by heart, but in Czech we say nazpaměť, paměť is memory. So this is a compound word that's like from out of memory until I have it in my memory. We don't involve hearts in the learning. Budu studovat denně, dokud to nebudu umět nazpaměť. Nebudu. Future and negative form. Next one. Neuvěříš tomu, dokud to sám nezažiješ. You won't believe it until you experience it yourself. Neuvěříš tomu, dokud to sám nezažiješ. Ne. This is in the future tense, so this is also in the future. You won't believe it until you experience it yourself. And I used this very, very similar sentence and used it in the past tense. So you see that, again, past tense is very common. Remember that mean sentence about a girl not being able to get married to Jarda as long as her parent lives? Let's go back to Jarda. Jarda nevěřil na lásku na první pohled, dokud ji sám nezažil. Jarda didn't believe in love at first sight until he experienced her love himself. Jarda nevěřil na lásku na první pohled, dokud ji sám nezažil.
Ale co se stalo? Láska na první pohled.
Here is what I want you to remember. Dokud can be translated as long as and while something's going on. In Czech we can use present, past and future in that case. The structure will be very similar to English, but watch out when we translate it with until, when we talk about a change in circumstances, because that in Czech involves the negative form in the verb, and we do not use the present tense because we're talking about something that will change or changed. And I would be happy if you remember at least 2 nice phrases. Umět nazpaměť, to know by heart, and láska na první pohled, love at first sight. Let's do a little exercise before I let you go. You will see 4 sentences here and your task will be to complete the rest of the sentence. Some of these sentences are very similar to the previous ones that I showed you. Jdeme na to. Číslo 1. We stayed outside as long as it was daylight. This is the same as we saw, except it's in past. I'll let you think about this. Pause the video. The correct answer is zůstali jsme venku, dokud bylo vidět. We're talking about it, something. It was possible to see. So bylo vidět. Číslo 2. I want to enjoy my children fully while they're small. Pause the video. And the sentence is chci si děti pořádně užít, dokud jsou malé. Dokud jsou malé. Present tense. Číslo 3. A phrase out of a recipe. Stir on a low flame until the onion turns golden. Turns golden. Another phrase I want you to remember from this video. And the sentence is smažte na mírném plameni, dokud cibulka nezezlátne. Notice we use cibulka instead of cibule because it's looking nice and tasty, so cibulka sounds better. Dokud cibulka nezezlátne. Remember, we had to use the negative form because we're talking about change in circumstances. Číslo 4. This is something so typical of my family. When we say goodbye, we always do this. We kept waving until the car disappeared around the corner. Pause the video. The sentence is mávali jsme, dokud auto nezmizelo za rohem. Dokud auto nezmizelo za rohem. we used a negative form of the verb because we talk about a change in circumstances. Okay, I have to keep my promise. There you go. If you're wondering why am I doing this, it's because usually when I record videos I get thirsty, and because I'm busy with recording I do not want to take a break to drink, so I made it part of the video. And also I'm hoping that you would remember how to use dokud, because listen to the sentence again. A dokud ho nevypiju, tak tahle lekce neskončí. Na zdraví. Okay? Now you can say, Zuzka řekla, že bude natáčet, dokud nevypije čaj. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I would like to give you a little task. Take a look at any recipe in Czech and look for the instructions. Let's see if you can find any instructions that say dokud, and write it in the comment. If you don't want to look for recipes, you can just write any sentence with dokud. And speaking of tea, you can see that I really like tea, and if you enjoyed this lesson you can also make a one-time contribution on buy me a coffee. I don't drink coffee, so you can buy me a tea. Děkuji moc, že podporujete moje videa. Thank you so much for supporting my videos. Nazdar!